the hatred of Jews hits different. Now, Jews talk a lot about the Holocaust. We make museums, build monuments, and demand that this dark chapter of Jewish history be taught in schools. Our detractors often see this as a calculated attempt by Jews to use our past trauma as a cover to prevent criticism of Israel, or trying to paint ourselves as the eternal victims when we currently have much more military power than our enemies in the Middle East. So let me explain. The reason why we want the world to understand what happened leading up to the Holocaust is because the hatred of Jewish people is an unparalleled form of bigotry. Generally speaking, discrimination towards a group comes from one opposing group. Usually, those who hate black people are white. Usually, those who hate people on the left are on the right, and vice versa. But when it comes to Jews, all the extremes of various groups reach a similar conclusion, although for different reasons, that the Jew is the source of the problem. The far left thinks Jews run the right. The far right thinks Jews run the left. Capitalists accuse Jews of being communists. The communists accuse Jews of being capitalists. Add in white supremacists, the black supremacists, the Christian extremists, and the Islamic extremists, and you begin to see the pattern here. The hatred of Jews is unique in that over the course of thousands of years and in different locations, Jews were labeled with whatever a society deemed to be evil at that time. Our ancestors have been scapegoated as those who killed Christ, those who poisoned wells during the Black Plague, those guilty of heresy during the Inquisition, those who corrupted economies and polluted the purity of other races during World War II, those who controlled the media, those who spread a COVID-19 agenda, and the latest trend, those who are blamed for orchestrating a genocidal ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. No matter the source of origin of these accusations and movements, they all eventually led to Jews being kicked out of the countries they lived in, and the most extreme actors actually attempted to kill them all. A lot of Jews feel that if we don't educate people on how the Holocaust unfolded, something similar is bound to happen again. So now comes the predicament that the Jewish people and the state of Israel are in today. I'm sure that most proponents of the Palestinian cause genuinely care for the well-being of Palestinians. They feel a call to stand with the perceived underdog and fight against injustices everywhere in the world. Unfortunately, their anger and blame are misguided by incomplete historical narratives and the propping up of tokenized Jewish voices that have distanced themselves from the larger Jewish collective and often attempt to force an impossible divide between Jewish identity and Israel. This leaves pro-Palestinian voices susceptible to fall into the classic and historical pattern of antisemitism, even if it's not their intention. You see, social movements against Jews intensify over time through conspiracies that frame Jews as powerful manipulators who are secretly pulling the strings of the world. By constantly defaming our morality and blaming Jews as the sole cause for problems that exist within a society, the general population slowly becomes duped into believing that Jews are a group of wicked, selfish people. This social paradigm is what allowed so many German citizens to stay passive during the Holocaust while their Jewish neighbors were rounded up and targeted solely because of their identity. Now we are witnessing an updated version of the same stereotypes used by Nazi propagandists. Let me be clear, legitimate criticism of an Israeli government policy accompanied by suggestions for better alternatives is productive discourse, but an argument becomes anti-Semitic when it shifts into broadly demonizing Israelis and attacking our character by trying to paint us as an immoral society that intentionally harms Palestinians. These accusations usually leave out the greater context of the situation and instead weaponize the very real suffering of Palestinians as a tool to attack Israel. We find ourselves accused of colonialism when we're not a colony of any other nation. They say it's an apartheid while there are Arabs serving as judges on the Israeli Supreme Court. And they shout genocide when the Palestinian population has consistently increased since the war in 1948. Isn't it strange that the worst crimes committed by the Western world for centuries are now the same accusations being falsely charged at Israel? When Jews and our allies attempt to respond to these distorted and emotionally charged allegations, our opponents frequently dismiss everything we say as Zionist propaganda, and that every good thing Israel does is only an attempt to hide their evil war crimes. Can't you see we're all living in echo chambers in which the bias of the particular media we consume is radicalizing both sides even further against each other? People have been wrongly led to believe that the only way to be pro-Palestinian is to be against Israel, and vice versa. Many voices around the world, especially those in the West, are pushing this divide by telling people they need to pick a side as if this is some football match. Picking a side is the problem, not the solution. Neither side is going to disappear, and both sides are ready and willing to fight to the death for this land. We must all be on the side of ending this conflict and seeking justice for everyone in the land. We will have strong disagreements on the best ways to go about that, but let's at least get aligned on the larger goal. No one knows exactly what a just political solution will look like, but the process starts by understanding the narrative of the other from their perspective and learning to empathize with them while rejecting voices that deny their identity and lived experience. Wake up to the reality that both Israelis and Palestinians are the victims of this horrible conflict. Each side carries so much pain and trauma, making it difficult to have any compassion left to care for the tragedy of the other side. If you truly stand against the death of innocent people, then you must stand against the black and white narratives that paint one side as good and the entire other side as evil. Stand against divisive language, tokenization, sweeping generalizations, and demonizing of the other. The Holocaust built up gradually over a decade. It eventually reached a tipping point where there was no longer room for discussion and stopping the Nazi regime. We haven't yet reached that tipping point in our generation, but we are getting close. Speak up with the intention to bring both sides closer and dispelling all this darkness with light.